So we'll start the meeting. This is the Bristol Planning Commission meeting for July 18th, 2023. It is 7:03 and we will call the meeting to order. First item is to review the agenda. If there's any additions, removals, or adjustments. I have none. Does anybody else have any? On to business, which is with.
So see, we can probably scratch B on the number 4, since Chris isn't here.
Yes, and I had a conversation with him earlier, and he had nothing to report anyway. So, good point. We will not be discussing the zone administrative report tonight. Thank you, Shannon. Can everybody see the owl? We can't see it in here, but if you can see us. Okay. So we will start with our continuing business with bylaw modernization work with the regional planning, and Adam's here to pick up those next 3 items on the agenda.
Great. So hi all, nice to see you again. The first item on our agenda was basically a recap of progress and a roadmap to complete this project. So it looks like Kevin's gonna put something up for you all right now, which means I won't be able to see you. So if you have a question about it, please speak up. So we really began this project in earnest last September, so about 10 months ago. We did some trainings first. We did roles and responsibilities in the Planning Commission and Zoning Board and et cetera. So where you fit in within town government and how we adopt zoning bylaws. We did implementation training and how we implement those bylaws, and some demographics and some mapping. So the demographics, why are we looking at the housing study? What's going on with our populations? And honestly, in Bristol, as in most other places, we found that there was a need for smaller units. There were more, less core families and more, households of 1 or 2 people. In November of last year, we changed. We started work on the regulations in earnest. We started with the broader picture. So we started with definitions. We started with looking at whether the use of site plan review versus conditional use review. December, we started to discuss ADUs and existing setbacks. We had a winter of ADUs. We spent a little time in January and February on ADUs as well. Moving to the HDR district. So the first into the HDR district and its specific standards, February and in March. We finished up the HDR district in April and moved to the Village Mix district. We did not meet in May. In June, we talked about S100, or the Home Act as it is now called. And move through Village Mixed and into Village Residential. And that's where we currently sit, is Village Residential. I hope we will get through that tonight. Perhaps the Rock District as well, residential office commercial, which is along largely West Street. And then take a look at S100 again and how it impacted your village business district. So I have a recommendation for you regarding maybe the easiest way to change your zoning regulations to react to S100. In August, I'm hoping that we can complete changes to the districts. In September, Kevin and I had talked about having 2 meetings. At the first one, we would hopefully review all the districts and get everybody on the same page and basically approve the work that you've done this spring and summer on the districts. And then we'd move to back to broader definitional things. discussion of parking, subdivision, other concerns, and I know Kevin has a couple of other concerns in what he's calling the parking lot in his notes. October, again, I would propose 2 meetings, finishing up the parking lot, subdivision, other issues, and then basically a final approval for everything. So again, taking a look at everything in total and hopefully getting the entire planning commission to agree as to what they want to put forward to the public. In November, I would propose we have a public hearing for the planning commission. You need 15 days notice for zoning as opposed to 30 for town plans. So it's doable. Depending on what the public says, we would go back and potentially ask the select board for a public meeting in December. This project technically finishes in December. I have on here March adoption at town meeting, and in order to get things on your agenda for March, you really need to have them done by, December. So the select board public hearing makes sense then. But I also have a note, and that is that the Home Act or S-100 appears to no longer require, but will allow zoning bylaws to go for a public vote. So the new law, the Home Act removed the provisions of in statute that Bristol had exercised years ago. I don't know how long ago, requiring that zoning bylaws go to the general public. So your select board still has the ability to send them to the public for a vote, but it doesn't have to anymore as I read the Home Act. So
that would be a select board decision, not necessarily a planning commission decision.
Exactly, they would get to decide. So at the end of this process, they'll have some decisions to make. But if they want to, if they choose to vote themselves, they could get things done quicker, or it wouldn't be so urgent that they had their public hearing in December, and they could have more than one if they chose to. Because the time crunch to get to town meeting, I'll say, goes away.
So how does that work, since the town Bristol had enacted that it needed to be voted on? Is that a change of, I don't know how that's recorded and everything else, but
Right.
how does that go about?
So basically, the change in the state statute kind of wiped out that previous vote and set the stage clean.
So there's no referendum or anything like that needed, or I don't know what the word would be. It's just, you don't have to acknowledge that anymore as a select board, and that's it.
I think the select board at one of their meetings would say, they may talk to the town attorney and say, we've interpreted the Home Act, the state law has changed. Our previous vote is made kind of null and void by that change. It still allows us, the select board, to make the decision on a case-by-case basis to send zoning to the voters if we choose to. So they can make that decision. And there's still provisions in there where if there's a petition of, I believe it's 5% of the voters to send something to the voters, that provision still applies. But the what I call the automatic, every decision goes to the voters was deleted from statute.
So, but they could abide by that? They wanted to still?
They could choose on a case-by-case basis to send things to the voters. But your blanket vote to send everything to the voters basically was removed from statute, or was overridden by statute.
But so does that mean we can't do it anymore?
No, you can do it on a case-by-case basis, but
We can't do it on a blanket.
Right. The select board makes that decision.
So they can't submit the new zoning rules and regs to the community for approval. They could only pick out high density residential and focus on that? Is that what you're saying?
Nope. What I'm saying is prior to the Home Act,
Right.
Bristol had enacted a vote that said every change we make to zoning will go before the voters. The Home Act basically canceled out that provision for rural towns. It still left the ability for the select board on a one-time, on a case-by-case basis to send zoning to the voters if they chose to. It's not going to be automatic, but if the select board says, yeah, I want to send this zoning change to the voters, they have the ability to do it. So it will be their decision.
Do we have the ability, Adam, to reenact that provision in Bristol if we so chose?
The voters could petition at any given time to basically have the bylaws sent to the voters, but I would tell you otherwise, no. That
Wow.
blank, everything goes.
I find that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it was taken out of the statute. It's no longer a choice in statute.
But to be clear, like if we wanted to submit to the voters even the most minute change at any given time with the select board's support, that could happen. So it's not actually changing what's possible, it's changing the process. It's not saying it will go automatically, it's saying, should the select board elect to send this to the voters, we can. So it still can happen the exact same way. There's an additional required step, or did I miss something?
No, that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
But we need the permission of the select board to have a public vote on it at any time. We can not able to require that in Bristol from here out. That vote of the public has been
5%. Well, so I'd say there are two things. Generally, the answer is correct. The select board gets to vote on zoning bylaws unless it chooses not to and give it to the voters. If the voters were to get a petition of 5% of the population or more saying we want this to go to a vote, they could force the select board's hand, but it's not automatically going to happen like it had previously.
So we would have to redo that if we wanted that to be the way it's done here in Bristol.
You would have to petition every time you wanted to do that. Or the select board could just choose to do it.
Wow, that's really, I don't know about you guys, but I'm old enough to remember when local control was a good thing.
Well, it's what the law is now, so I mean, it's not, we can debate it, but it's not gonna affect anything.
Well, I'm curious what my fellow board members think about that, the removal of something that was so strongly supported in Bristol.
Well, it's a select board decision, so we can recommend it, but it's ultimately the select board that decides it.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking now for some reaction to that. Is that viewed as a positive step by most of you?
I don't think the question is germane to what we're talking about, Jim.
Is there a public hearing required though?
Yes, two public hearings are still required, one by the planning commission and one by the select board. And you could have more than one if you chose to.
I'd say nothing does, one of our challenges as we know is getting public engagement on the question of planning and zoning. And I think when the legislature acts to remove people's ability to meaningfully, be a part of that process, it makes it even harder to get people involved.
Well, the onus is still on us to have public hearings and to get that information out. So it's out there and understood and broad.
So this is a change that you all support. I'm curious for that.
It does, John, and from my view, it doesn't matter if we support it or not. It kind of is what it is, whether we like it or not, and that's kind of where we're at. So I was just trying to get.
I'm just trying to get to know people a little bit.
What it meant for us in terms of what we were getting, the steps were gonna be and what the steps we were able to take in the future, so.
No,
I would,
understand the
I would add,
legislature-
John,
Sorry, go ahead.
that it raises our responsibility as a commission. If that's something we feel is important, to engage the public more, to be more proactive about our work and what we do, and trying to create interest in that. I realize that, having something automatically kind of ready in front of the voters for town meeting day, or, any other election day, makes it easier to do that because it's front and center. It's like, oh, well, now I have to consider this. I might not have thought about it, but oops, it's right here on my ballot. So maybe I do want to think about it or ask some questions. I understand that trying to get the people who live in our town to be informed ahead of time, understand what's happening, understand what changes do mean and what that can mean on a larger scale for our village, our town, what it could mean just, like, okay, down the street from you or next door to you, and maybe something is happening that you weren't ready for, or maybe don't like, but trying to get people interested and engaged and informed ahead of time. I realize that's a big challenge, but I think it's right that at this point, this is what the legislature has done. So we're going to have to try to find a way to work with that if we feel like it's important to continue to have that public engagement piece.
Okay, let's wrap up that aspect and go to the next item.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is basically a view or a review of the village residential district. And now if you would pull, well, one more second, and then we'll pull up the map and show again what we're talking about. But if you recall, at our last meeting, we ended on this topic. I believe it was John that had proposed sort of near the middle of the meeting that we change the dimensional standards within the village residential district to mimic the basically the high density residential district. And we had previously changed the mixed district to mimic the high density residential district. During our discussion, several of you expressed concern, well, that might be appropriate down on Plank Road or down near the Notch Road, but it was not appropriate along Mountain Street. So basically up against the Hogback where that district also is. One of the suggestions, or one of the last things we talked about, was, well, maybe we separate out the village residential district, and the portion near Plank Road and or the portion near the Notch Road, Lover's Lane should be amended, but the portion near Mountain Street should not. And that's kind of where we stopped the discussion last time. So I'm going to ask Kevin to pull up a map so we can just quickly review the areas that we're talking about and make sure that you all agree with my remembering of the meeting, and just scroll down, please. So we're going to scroll down for a little bit, I think. That's the village residential district.
Okay.
Okay. So you can see there are roughly 3 areas of your village residential district on this map. The village residential district itself within the village planning area is in what I will call light green. The parcels that are included within that village residential district are in yellow. So you can see the district doesn't exactly follow any particular parcel lines. It encompasses a lot of parcels, but there are some big parcels that are both within and without the district or outside of the district. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay,
I think I might have a question.
go ahead.
So along the Mountain Street area that we're about to discuss, all the, excuse me. So all the houses that are on the east side of Mountain Street or abut Mountain Street are in high density residential.
It looks like almost all of them are, yes. There may be
And-
one or two that get up into village residential, but
And then
most of
they-
them look on like they're in high density.
And the area we're talking under question is in back of those lots typically
Yes,
without any street access. Well,
It looks like it runs along the backside of the standard lots that front.
yeah, and there's
Mountain
no
Street.
street access is from Mountain Street. There's not another,
Parallel.
there's nothing there. So it's the bottom of the mountain essentially.
it's where it starts to rise pretty quickly, yes. And
There's a chance that was put in as a buffer to, is that just conservation on the backside of that?
Yeah.
yes,
So there was a chance that some of those larger lots there, this was put in as a buffer in between the two.
Yeah. Thank you.
okay, so we were discussing whether the portion of the village residential district in the vicinity of Plank Road, so in the top left of your screen, might be different, might have different characteristics than the village residential district, again, along Mountain Street. And also, there's one more big area of village residential down below Lathrop's Mill, yes. There. What's the name of that street?
South Street.
Well, South Street goes over the bridge there. Is that
That's lower
still-
now.
Looks around.
Rounds Road.
Thank you. And whether or not the characteristics there would be different. And whether or not we want to divide up this district. I think I also told you generally, I didn't want to be doing a lot of amending districts in this exercise, but that this one might make sense. And that's where we left off the discussion. And I think you all were going to go back and think on it a little bit and whether or not the differences in this district were distinct enough that we should divide off Mountain Street. And basically make this area down off, I guess, Rounds Road and the area up off of Plank Road. Change the dimensional standards there so that they were more in line with what you've done for high density residential and what you've done for the mixed district. So I guess I'd open the floor back up to all of you and see what you all thought and what you all think now.
If I recall correctly, one of the concerns about the Mountain Street section had to do with development coverage, impermeable surfaces, and water, and the impact of water and flooding on those properties should they be developed further, given past history. I would say, given what we've just experienced in Vermont, that's certainly relevant. I imagine that might actually be similar on that section down by Lathrop's, closer to the river, just in terms of elevation. I don't even know how developable that land really is, but if you're looking at trying to create driveways, houses, et cetera, and then managing water and septic, I imagine that might be challenging. I would say the section up on Plank Road is different, in terms of what the landscape is like and what the surrounding area is like and how developed it is already. So I would say if there's an argument to be made, it might be to have the Plank Road section be differentiated. Perhaps not the other two, not just Mountain, but maybe think about the southern portion in the same way.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
John?
Adam, just to clarify, was one of the suggestions moving or converting, I'm not sure what the right term is, this southern section, did you say to the mix zone?
I believe at our previous meeting, we had changed the dimensional standards of the mix zone to mimic basically the dimensional standards of the HDR district. So we could do one of two things, depending, we could move any of these large blocks into the mixed zone and retain the village residential as it is for the remainder. So yes, I think it's basically it would be adding these to the mixed zone.
Yeah, so if that's the case, and I can see that rationale, I couldn't support that myself unless we removed the business yard use from the mixed zone, because that's a use that was just added recently with the last change. And so far in the mixed zone, one place in the mixed zone, it's been used to, basically it's sort of a loophole for very heavy industrial activity to happen. And I don't think, we'd want that adjacent to areas where we want to encourage dense housing. So that would be something I'd be looking for if we were thinking about converting it to mix or adding it to mix.
Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we, change it to mix, but modify it by section, not the entirety? Like, can we have things for Plank Road that we don't have on the other two, or do we have to separate those into separate districts?
I would prefer, I would prefer that you keep your districts uniform, so keep the uses allowed in each district uniform, Melissa. So if you were to take John's suggestion and remove the business yard from the mixed district, then you'd remove it across the mixed district, not just in any one particular place.
Right, but I mean, to make any changes. So if we want to exempt Mountain Street and Round Road, we have to separate them into a separate district, or put Plank Road into a separate district, right?
You could retain them in your village residential district if you chose to, and just move the Plank Road section into the village or the village mixed. You could move Plank Road and what we're calling Rounds Road, or down by Lathrop, into the village mixed. So you have the power to kind of, I guess I'll say, mix and match, for lack of a better term. You can choose to do it just within a district. We need to have the uses and the dimensional standards consistent.
So the village residential doesn't have business yards in
I'm sorry, what was that question? I didn't hear.
it? I'm sorry, my question was that the village residential had business yard as a use currently.
No, it does not. It's got a more limited scope of allowed uses than the village mix does.
Slim, what do you think?
Well, I'm certainly for not expanding the density on the hogback, and I was just trying to read up here on the business yard, because I'm not too familiar with that. It didn't exist the last time I was on this sort of board. So I could read, or I could get a little input from people here that know what does the business yard actually allow. I'm reading it. I mean,
I
I
can
would like
tell
you to
you,
read it, Slim.
I'm reading it right now. So then I'll get back to you.
Okay,
So my concern with moving all this stuff into the same as what we did with the residential is the density of it. And this is kind of the outer ring almost of the village planning area. And there was previously a progression out of density into, so you get to the RA, 1, 2 areas. And if you go to HDR on this, it's going to be a wall of density where there's no core and then filtering out. It's going to be just a wall of density at the edge of the planning area, with everything being 1 or 2 outside of that for density. That's one of the concerns, that as you start looking at these individually, oh, it's still close, it's okay, you looking at it in a vacuum almost, it's easy to say, yeah, that fits too. And then all of a sudden you have the same density as HDR all the way out up against RA1 and no progression out.
so the village mixed is what we talked about the last time, right? That's,
Yes.
which would be these lots here.
Yes.
Dark green.
All of them.
Anything that's highlighted.
Anything that's highlighted, any green is the village mixed, and then within on that map, I think the key is the yellow ones are industrial uses currently, or commercial industrial uses as opposed to residential uses.
And so we are doing that around Lovers Lane and Hewitt Road. Because like the school and
The dump.
and some of these other things, it's not gonna be. And then. But then we're saying. Plank Road is. Plank Road is different. Shannon, what are your thoughts?
I guess if you wanted to pull, I guess the Plank Road, I would say that more going into the mixed district and sort of leaving those other areas where we are worried about, slope and flooding and that type of thing, that they probably should be in the village residential. That's my
Bill,
opinion.
thanks. Bill,
Can you refresh my memory as to what density village residential allows?
So your village residential is basically 2 dwelling units per acre, with the smallest minimum residential lot size of 10,000 square feet. So it is exactly the density, residential density is exactly half of what your high density residential district, village mixed district are.
Well, I suppose my view would be that, yes, on the Mountain Street, soils are either steep or shallow, so we probably shouldn't make any change there. I do believe the soils in the plateau on the south end that we were looking at earlier are pretty good. And so far as they're concerned, they can take higher density. It's not a lot different than the soils in the village. And then at the same time, I also believe Plank Road could stand a little more density perhaps than they have now. I'm not remembering just quite where they are now, but finally, it was an important principle that we wanted to progressively, gradually reduce density as we got away from the core of the village. So balancing all those factors are what I'm thinking about, right, in my mind.
So, Bill, did I hear you say that you want to keep Mountain Street within the village residential district and the same, but perhaps move Plank and South to mix, or did you not make a decision on Plank and South?
I wouldn't want density to be any higher on the Mountain Street. And I'm not sure how the yellow and green work there on the map.
Yellows are parcels that are within that district, but not totally within that district.
Okay. The south area. The mixed is a higher or not a higher density than the village residential?
It's the same. It's 4 units per, well, as of last meeting, we haven't voted officially, but
It was previously 2.
It was previously 2. You changed it to 4 at the last meeting, or the planning commission changed it to 4 at the last meeting. So
Go ahead.
it's the same density as your HDR district.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be too much, I think, as you're moving away from the village. I'd sooner leave it a little less density, not high density. And on the other hand, up on Plank Road, I could see that density getting a little higher. Right now it's at 2, is it? Did I understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
The soil, I mean, the landscape is a little flatter. It's got a good road right through the middle of it. So relatively easy access to both the downtown and to those who want to go to Chittenden County either for shopping or for work. So I could see a little higher density evidently than we have right now in the Plank Road area. The neighboring density to the south that we talked about in earlier meetings is what right now? 4?
When you say the south, do you mean to the south of Plank Road?
No, yes, I do.
So that would be the mixed district. So that's 4. Yes, correct.
Same as in high density.
Yes.
And right now, the yellow and green on the Plank Road area is 2.
Correct.
I suppose at this moment, and bearing in mind that we'll be back revisiting all this in 5 years, right, Adam?
That's up to you.
Okay. I mean, it's in the something's supposed to happen every 5 years.
That's your plan. Well, your plan you redo every 8 years. Yes.
8?
Used to be
Okay.
5.
Okay, see, I'm behind the times. Eight's fine. It'll be here before we know it. I'd be inclined to leave it where it is right now, but anticipate that we would increase the density in 8 years. That's my view.
Thanks. Fred?
I'm okay with the higher density on the lower notch area. I've walked that many times, and to Bill's point, the soils there are suitable for development. There's a steep pitch, but you wouldn't build anything on that. Most of that green area is up on the plateau that exists there and is very developable. And the Plank Road ditto. I think Mountain Street, we should have the lowest density that makes sense, because I do think that can pose a risk not only to people who might build there, but it enhances the risks of people on Mountain Street and Down Street from there. Spring Street didn't get named Spring Street for the season. It was named for the amount of water that can flow down that road, which I've seen many times living, less than a block away from it. And they've done a good job with that stormwater. They really did a great job with that stormwater redo some years ago when we had such a big problem. But things don't last forever. So that would be my sentiment. From like Mountain Street, I would go all the way down to, it's really on East Street, I guess. It extends a little bit beyond the water tower, all the way on up. And I don't know whether you put it in another district to make it work, or you just carve it out. We shouldn't be building on that hillside.
What we may do is just, what I propose you do is just keep it as village residential and not change those regulations.
Okay, that's a compromise, I guess. That'd be fine. In my opinion, that's my sense of it.
So I'm not sure I heard a lot of consensus. I think I heard a lot of different aspects to the three parts of this. Melissa, do you have something?
Well, I think we probably it seems like we all agree that Plank Road could definitely go with higher density. Or did Bill say no? I can't, sorry.
I'm seeing some naysayers with even that.
Well, that seems like the,
I don't know exactly the count, but
yeah, it seems like the most logical place to do some, increased density, because it's right on the edge. It's just sort of expanding the village a little, and but yeah, I think we all agree Mountain Street should just be left as, residential and not increase that. I do have and I'm sorry, I can't remember who spoke first about the possibility of, on the southern part, flooding in the future. And that, I would have a concern with that, because it's, yeah, I mean, it may be good soil, but how much higher is it than the river?
Quite a bit.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know
It's quite a bit.
exactly from the map. I can't really.
Right.
almost as high as the village from the river.
Okay,
I
so
would
this-
say it's at least 50 feet above the river. I'm not very good at those things. Maybe it's
So is
even
that
100.
going up
More.
Notch Road, Lower Notch Road? Is that where we're
Right,
talking?
right. There's three accesses to that parcel. There's
Okay.
one down by the bridge on South Street. There's another one just 100 feet or so down the road on the left. And then Rounds Road gives you a third access to a plateau, which was proposed to be a large gravel pit, as John would remember years ago. I think it was even stressed at that time, residential would be a much better use for that particular land rather than a gravel pit. And someone could put quite a nice development there and have access. The roads to it would be the things that would wash out. I don't think the homes there would flood.
Right. Okay.
So do we want to do a thumbs up? I say, go ahead, Slim.
Can I have something to say here?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I've read our the condition, the uses and such for mixed village mixed. And it not only includes business yard, but also sawmill. Now, when I think of increasing residential density, I do not think of a sawmill next door. Nor do I think of what I've read of a business yard where you can store and maintain and work on heavy equipment. This is not light industrial. This is in my mind, kind of getting much closer. Yeah, anyway, there's real offsite impacts on these sorts of situations when you have people working on heavy industry, heavy machinery. So this is confusing me that we're trying to increase residential in an area that allows business yard and sawmills. So that's where I'm at right now.
Is this
Otherwise,
village,
it
is
was
this
a great-
village residential, Slim?
Village mix,
You're talking about village mix.
Village mixed.
Well, we're trying to
Village
move
mixed, yeah.
That's the idea, is to move these to village mixed, but that would allow a
No.
sawmill or a business yard to move in, and I guess I wouldn't agree with a business yard or a sawmill, but anyway, that's me.
And
That's
Anna,
what
did
I
you-
was gonna add. Yeah, I had read the same definitions, sort of trying to brush up on what I couldn't remember from last time. And I would concur that if the idea is to increase available housing, right? More places for people to live, living next door to a sawmill and living next door to a business yard that has trucks, even though the intention is primarily for the storage and maintenance of those vehicles not coming and going, it does mean that, first thing in the morning and at the end of the workday, if someone is using that to store their heavy dump trucks, they're coming and going, blowing up dust right next to what it's maybe someone's house or apartment. I don't know if that creates nice housing. It creates nice development, use of land, use of your property. But I think if our goal is to increase residential density, that's questionable in my mind. I wouldn't necessarily be against thinking about that section of Plank Road as being high density residential. I would be more open to that as a concept. If that's what you're really thinking about, is trying to make it more available housing.
Me too.
Me too.
Village mix.
I think we can figure this out, maybe a little historical perspective. As I recall, the reason sawmill was included, not that there's anything wrong with a sawmill, it almost sounded like there was a little bit of a tone in the description of that particular use. But it was originally because the Lathrop sawmill was in the mixed district, if I'm not mistaken. And we wanted to make sure we didn't disallow that inadvertently. And now there's no sawmill there, but they do store wood products, and they do some processing there of a lighter kind. So I can understand how we don't necessarily want to expand mixed as it is. I would be reluctant to change the definition of mixed, but is there something we can do to get a little higher density without going to mixed? Is there an option there?
Sure. So we could probably look at a map, and your high density residential district, as Anna and Slim suggested, abuts these two areas. So your existing mixed districts abut it, and your existing high density residential districts abut it. So if you were more interested in expanding out just the high density residential district and those uses, that's certainly something that you could choose to do. Probably all the way down, not up, I think is where the overall map, or
Okay.
no, that might work. Go ahead. If you go up to the high density residential district, we can do it. Well, you just went by it. There's your high density residential district in beige. And the areas that we were talking about are at basically the bottom. Keep going down the bottom, the bottom of the screen. So you can see the thumb in the river, and it's basically below that district, right where Kevin's pointer is one of the parcels that we're talking about changing from village residential. And the other is basically at the top, right up where Kevin's pointer is now. So both adjacent to high density residential, if that's something that makes more sense to all of you.
Melissa,
Yeah, I have a question. If we make something, if we increase the density for mixed, or if it is mixed, can we disallow certain things like business yard or sawmill, or is that set? If it's that district, that has to be allowed.
So, Bill's history, I think, was pretty accurate, Melissa, that you currently have a mixed use district. And it includes where the Lathrop sawmill was. So that's why it's an allowed use. It's something that existed. You have the ability to change it if you would like to. I think what Anna and Slim suggested was, if we're looking to develop housing, rather than moving to a mixed district, moving to a high density residential district might be a better fit.
John, did you have something?
Yeah, just a point of information, on that southern parcel where the gravel pit had been proposed, about half of that, the northern part of that, is gonna host 30 some odd acres of solar panels. I think they're building it now. So that's gonna be out of commission for 20 or 30 years. It's gonna be a big solar farm on half of that. It does drain really well over there too. It's a big pile of gravel, just like the village. And I would just simply note that most of this, if not all, it's hard to tell from the map exactly, but most of what we're talking about is in the village planning area, which is intended to be, for the future growth of the village, which I think we've acknowledged. So, I'd be at peace with more density in any of those zones, except I find myself convinced on the Mountain Street thing that ought to stay as it is.
Is there anything between high density and low density? Something like a medium density?
I
That's
think
what it
that's
was.
village residential.
That's right.
That's what it is now, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it was in between the four units per acre of HDR and the RA and the 1 unit per acre of RA1 that's on the other side of it. And I'm hesitant to say to move it into HDR because I don't think we ever finished up and landed on what HDR was going to be. And if we're going to increase that density, I definitely don't want to take this that was 2 units per acre and end up with 5 units per acre out there. Some of these other places as well, all of a sudden.
I got the strong message from all of you that you really didn't want to change the HDR district. And if we jog some things around so that your village business district matches your village sewer area, you're not going to have to.
Do we need to gel on that a little bit, Adam, or?
Well, I kind of thought I heard more of a consensus, or so the Mountain Street will definitely remain village residential unless somebody has another plan for that, but it's not, they don't want to change the density. They don't want to increase the density there. Rob and Bill had reservations of changing density on both Plank Road and down, I'll call it the former Lathrop parcel, Notch Road. But most everybody else seemed to, I think, come around to the idea that HDR might work in those 2 areas. I don't know whether that, or actually, and Anna and Shannon were amenable to, I think, HDR in the Plank Road area, but not in the Notch Road area. So I think we've got a strong message on a consensus on the village residential. I think we might have a consensus on the Plank Road or close to a consent, not a consensus, but a majority on the Plank Road, and then I think we're probably mixed on the Notch Road area. Does that sound like what everybody else heard?
Does anybody dispute that? Going at it from a negative? I guess one thing I'll bring up was John's point about the solar farm on the Notch property, which is a significant portion of that property. Does that impact should that impact the thought process of changing that?
I mean, it's basically that whole field section as it's shown on the map, right? That includes.
Yeah, it's probably 40% of that.
Yeah,
It's
I would say if
35 acres.
at a minimum, it probably makes considering that or changing that right now kind of moot. It might be different when it's no longer a solar farm, if that's in its future, but for the foreseeable future, that's what the majority of parcel will be. So it's not really developable land for housing or other uses, even if you allowed that, you allowed more density, like it's kind of done, right?
well, the other half of it would be, the other half of that parcel that if
Could
it's accessible from Rounds Road would be developable.
And the point I think
Yeah.
is so desirable is that, you know.
Yeah,
Well, let
There's
people
no
who want
trees
to build
between.
decide that, not our decision to decide that.
There's still screening between, I mean,
Mhm.
And, if we changed it, or if we left it the same, how do they describe a solar farm? Is that an industrial electric generation use? How does that fit?
That is
I've no
ruled by the PUC and there's not a whole lot of control over it.
Okay, so it's not a
exempted.
problem. It could be any district we wanted and it would be fine.
yeah, what we do can't change
Okay,
that.
I think just because there's a solar farm there, it will be, I don't see why that matters.
Yeah, I agree with Fred. I'd love to see it, like, imagine the solar farm wasn't there, what would we want it to be? And we could zone it that way, and that might guide the future solar farm owners, I don't know, but
Who knows? I mean, sometimes, one of the reasons we have the problem we have in general, big picture, is this. Well, there's a solar farm, there. Maybe we shouldn't do that. What are people gonna think? Whatever, let people think what they will and give them as much flexibility to do what they will. So if they want to put 25 homes on the remainder, whatever would be permitted with a solar farm adjacent to it, fine. Fine. I bet you'll find people that'll buy them. I don't think you'll have any trouble with that. If it was a smelting factory, that might be an issue, but I don't think solar panels, for some people, they like it. For some people, they would stay away, but let them decide.
you know, it's sort of, as much as I support solar power, I love to see it developed. It's the way we got to go. But that whole 34 acres over there is going to pay $25,000 a year in property taxes for each of 30 years, which, if you imagine it built out as, 2 homes an acre or 3 homes an acre, which is a fraction of what we would get, from it. Not that there aren't costs associated, but yeah, anyway. Its highest and best use is homes.
And
in my mind.
just to clarify, given what's down there, just so I have a sense of what the geography looks like. Right now, it looks like about half is going to be a solar farm. The rest, no. Okay,
That's correct.
that might.
You can see very clearly on the map, if we went back to that, the sort of open part of that on the north closest to town is about 30 or so acres, and the part to the south is about 30 or so acres. And it's, if you look over there now today, go up on the mountain or something, look over there, or if the leaves are down, it's that pale green part that you see there. That's like the open field part. That's where the solar
Okay.
farm's going to go.
That you're right, John. That leaves a good portion that isn't being used for a solar farm.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I mean, that land
That makes more sense.
it's exactly like the village. It perks, it drains, there's a ton of water underneath it. It's a great place for a village, but
Well, and it's at elevation, not right next to the river.
Yeah, no, the river's like 70 feet lower
Yeah.
than that plateau top.
Thank you for the clarification. Very helpful.
So where are we gelling
Well,
or not?
let's ask that. I think we've made the decision that we're gonna leave Mountain Street Village residential and not change the density there. And everybody support that?
Yep.
Yes,
Great. Let's go to Plank Road next, because I thought I heard not necessarily a consensus, but maybe a majority that thought that HDR going from 2 to 4 units per acre there would work. And Kevin, you might want to take a vote or a straw poll on that and see if that's true. Or
Let's do it. Thumbs.
This is, for this.
for the Plank Road piece.
If you're in favor of increasing the density from 4 through
Basically from 2,
high
so we
density
created, we
residential.
we change the regulations to match high density, or we change that area to a high density residential district. Yes, to mirror, it would become part of the dark blue, the high density residential district.
So thumbs up if you're in agreement with that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.
At a 9, so.
So that's a majority of people.
At this point.
It is.
That's a
And
significant, that's a.
2/3.
So if you take supermajority, right?
Just like the
Okay.
Supreme Court.
okay, and then what we'll call the I'm sorry, Fred, what did you call that? You called it the
Call it the
notch.
Notch Road. It's a lot, most of the border here is the Notch Road.
The Notch Road portion, I guess. The question would be, should it also be high density residential or should it remain village residential? So if we did a vote
Another straw poll, thumbs up if you agree.
for high
High
density,
density on the Notch Road.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Same thing.
same thing.
At this point, we'll
Okay. Thank you all.
What is? Adam, did I see that?
See what? Yes.
Sorry, thank you. Sure. I'm trying to remember what the little piece in between the two was in the village mix.
Which one?
This.
It's confusing.
It's all about, it was all about the uses. That's
Probably-
why it was
Probably a pre-existing use there.
broken off. Differently than the residential, it was the uses.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I think we're done then with village residential. So I'd like to move to rock, but before I do that, I want to talk about perhaps putting a couple of parcels from the rock and from the excuse me. I think from your high density residential district into your village business district. And what I'm proposing is we make your village business district match your existing septic or sewer area. So in your package, yep, that's it. There, I gave you a proposal. And this largely deals with the Home Act or S-100. So a lot of the provisions of S-100 for the most density, 5 units per acre density, dealt with sewer areas or sewer or districts served by your sewer. Bristol has a relatively small sewer district. it's in hatched on the map that Kevin just brought up. So you can see it's not very big at all. It serves basically your business block downtown. But a couple of the parcels that are served by sewer fall over into your Rock district, and one parcel falls over into your high density residential district. So rather than having to amend all of your zoning districts to comply with S100 and have only a portion of the district comply with S100 and have another portion not do it, which gets confusing really quickly, taking these 4 parcels and amending them so that they are included within the adjacent village business district makes a lot of sense to me.
Can you point them out?
Sure. So can you see the 4 cross-hatched areas? So your village business district is in red.
Yes.
Your Rock district is in yellow, your high density residential district is in blue, and your sewer service area is in black crosshatched. So basically you can see that what I'm proposing is we take and extend your village business district, the red, to encompass the parcel that Kevin's pointer is on now, and then I also, there's a little corner of parcels that are actually mostly within the district, but not completely down over there. Yes, see that little yellow? That would also. So everything that's cross-hatched in black, I would propose to put into your village business district, which is currently shown in red.
Quick
And that
question.
way,
Yeah, oh, sorry. Is the building up on North Street?
John, Rob's question is answered, then we'll go to you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't hearing that.
Oh, yeah, Rob had a question on the floor. He was asking what the difference between uses of the districts is. Adam's taking a look at that.
Rob, I don't know what is housed on each of those parcels, but I'll bet you between the collective knowledge in this room, you can tell me what those.
Well, the 2 parcels
Right on
the
Main
north
Street.
side of Main Street. One is my old office building. The other is the apartment building, I think, that John has on the big triangle, kind of triangle-ish up above. And then on the other side of the street, it's very open and a very steep bank and a culvert that empties into it that goes down to some residential units further down. Now, where the residential units begin there, I don't know, quite frankly.
Would that be where?
Where the hand is right now is what I'm
Yeah,
referring to.
would that be South Mountain or Hatch Block?
I think the hatch block is the first one in purple.
Yeah, I know
Correct.
that
Yeah.
parcel where the hand is the bank to the south of the road there that is legally a parcel. Adam LaPearl owns it. But whether it's developable,
Right.
I guess you can do anything with money, but
Okay, so
And that.
I don't know why there's sewer extending to that
I
parcel.
don't either.
that's an apartment house.
Right. That's
Okay,
below, is that below Dave Henderson?
That's like a quadplex or something, that house.
Funeral parlor.
so since it was residential, you probably didn't extend your village business district to it last time. But because the S100 ties basically a lot of its regulatory requirements to areas served by water and sewer, it just makes a lot of sense to me to make these 4 parcel changes rather than trying to redraft each of these three districts to try and accommodate S100.
John,
Just a question, is the old almost home, that building up on North Street, is that in part of the sewer district now, and the old firehouse?
It certainly doesn't look like it. Your sewer district is in crosshatch right there. And that doesn't go very far up north. That doesn't get anywhere up North Street.
All right.
so I've heard a rumor there is a 4-inch line up to the old firehouse. And that's maybe what John is alluding to, that there was the capability to add those at one time, if there was a desire to.
So I got your village sewer area from Chris.
I think what happened is that the firehouse, the fire department wanted to build on that site. And the owners of the building of almost that market there, Bristol Market, they are really in a stuck spot because they don't have sewer capacity on site. And they were asking if they could get in on the sewer district too. And there was some public works that happened, and I do believe they laid a line in there, but I just don't know if those are ever included or not.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I know the firehouse, well, I don't know, but I don't believe the firehouse was ever connected because they abandoned that renovation. I don't know about the old almost home market building.
Right. And aside from everything I've said already, I'm not gonna say much more because that is my property. That oddball shaped property on Mountain Street is the old Bristol Trading Post, and I don't know if there's a conflict of interest or whatever, but that's my building.
I will ask Chris about the firehouse and the almost home market. I expect, since he did not put it on the map, he doesn't believe they're served. But I will ask the question and ask him to double check that.
I guess,
I'm pretty sure they're not.
yeah, I don't think they are either, but I guess the bigger question is, if they request to be served, would they have the right to hook up?
You're at capacity, basically, or you're very close to
Well, yeah,
capacity.
we're at capacity.
Yeah, then,
So the answer is no.
yeah, because this is already existing connections.
And someday to have capacity, do they?
That's a different story. If there's capacity, then
Oh, the Catholic Church or the school, you get all kinds of folks, the old high school, all kinds of places that fit that category.
Well, there's a pipe in the ground going up to the old fire station. That's what the sticky issue is.
if
No.
it would only matter if they're connected. If they're not connected, they're not connected. It wouldn't matter if it was in the ground and not connected, or one of these other properties that currently isn't connected, but within the district, adjacent to the others. It doesn't, it's the same category, you know, unless it was previously served by that sewer and it's just not active at the moment, and that is the only sewer for that lot. That would be the only thing. But if it's not connected, then most likely that's not the case.
Speaking to capacity, I believe, and I received this in the mail as a business building owner in Main Street, that quite a bit of our capacity is being taken up by the restaurants and their oil, not oil, their cooking oil and fats that go into the system. Now, they're making a change and they're gonna start charging them this and that. And so I just was saying, I don't know any particulars, but I feel like it's possible that some more capacity might be opened up when that issue is taken care of. That's just possible. Maybe.
It's possible, but I guess I tell you that this is, well, from speaking with Chris, he told me these were the lots that were served and that the sewer system was currently at capacity.
I think that's right.
So it is, the issue is BOD, and I can't remember what the.
BOD.
yeah, BOD bought.
Yeah.
Is,
Yeah.
and they're looking at trying to get that under control. And even if they do that, there's not gonna be expansion capability. It's just a matter of
It's
avoiding.
the strength of the wastewater is the issue from the restaurants, and that's. When you talk about BOD, it's the strength of the wastewater. So the higher the strength, it lowers how much you can take. You lose your gallons per day because of the higher strength.
But I get the impression that even they need to deal with that, and even if they deal with that, it's not gonna necessarily create capacity. It's just.
My sense from having been an observer at that particular select board meeting discussion is that it's not just about reducing, what the restaurants are producing with the BOD, but it's also a question that even if you did that, there's cost involved, significant cost. If you are looking to expand capacity. It's not just like, oh, there's more room in the tank, let's just hook up a bunch of businesses. It would be a quite involved infrastructure project that would require probably grant funding or a bond. So I don't think it's something that would happen quickly, but to be fair, it is something that could happen. My understanding is that if our, map of served properties and parcels expands, then the regulations passed by the state would apply. We would have to adjust. It's not that we decide, right? It's that if it expands, then,
If it
this
expands,
is,
then S100 would apply to
Yeah.
more area and you'd need to adjust. But for right now, I think this is a relatively simple solution rather than having, these 4 lots covered by different regulations than the rest of their zones. It just doesn't make sense.
Did you get your?
I don't know if we fully chased it out. My only concern, I think this should be fine, but my only concern would be moving one of these parcels into the village business district and causing a conflict of the current use versus the allowed uses in the village district. Or village business district. That's the only potential problem, because we don't want to create a unnecessary, grandfathered clause or something like that.
I think all the uses in those 4 parcels already comport with the village business.
Okay.
So multifamily dwellings are allowed within the village business district. That's at least 2 of them. Your offices are certainly allowed in the district. That's 3 of them.
There's not a large number of differences looking at them quickly. I don't think there's any repair shops or vehicle service stations in there, but there's just a couple of quick cursory overlook that there's a couple of differences. So.
There used to be where the bank is.
Okay, so are we generally in agreement? Is there any that we should pursue this strategy, or does anybody have? I'm not really hearing anybody articulate, except for 2 caveats, that we should not take the approach for the solution that Adam is proposing.
I'm in agreement with it.
The only thing that sort of doesn't look quite right to me is that one parcel is separate from the rest. So that brings up a term kind of called spot zoning that is in the back of my head that I'm not too familiar with or anything, but the one down South Street, it would seem like the 2.
It does still abut the village business district, though.
But
Right.
okay, so but the sewer does not go to those 2 other properties.
No,
Right, those other 2 are not served.
It doesn't go to any of them.
right,
Oh,
they have
you're
on-site
right. Just turn-
capacity.
Go to that one? Why would it go to that one?
The reason the one down below south doesn't have on-site capacity is the site is small, but the rest, whatever site is open is a parking lot for the residents, so. And it's on a steep hill at the back of the lot, so I just don't think they have the room for it, so they're on the system now. But Doc Henderson's building and the neighbors next door to him have capacity in their lots.
Okay.
And there are several lots that are in that district already that don't have septic. Like the sewer, like they're not served, but they're in the same district. So
Correct. Yeah, I get it.
Okay,
Okay, it sounds like we have consensus and we can make that change so that we're moving 4 lots into the village business district, taking 3 from the Rock, the residential office commercial, and taking 1 from the high density residential. So thank you. Let's see. We've got 5 minutes. Do you want to get into the ROC district? Let me give you a preview, and we won't make any decisions tonight, and we'll save it for next time. But at least you'll have, so I can give you something to think about. Wow. So residential office commercial, this is largely West Street. So for all intents and purposes, your main street up from 116 and 116, 17. Let's see. The parcels in red, highlighted in red, are less than 10,000 square feet. So there are a couple of them, but not very many. So 4, I believe, are a little bit below your minimum lot size right now. Most all of them conform in every other way. There are a couple that are within the road right of way, or less than 35 feet from the center of the road. But for the most part, I would tell you the buildings and the lots within your ROC district basically conform with it. Big difference between the Rock and the your high density residential district is that they've got 50 feet of frontage required versus 75 feet, so a bit less. You've got 2 parcels that have even less than 50. But I think you're overall in pretty good shape as far as what you have existing within that district. I guess I would tell you my big question mark for this district is whether or not you want to allow multifamily uses within this district. They are currently not allowed. And that was a result of a significant discussion the last time the Planning Commission made these decisions. So honestly, of your dimensional standards and of your use standards within this district that deal with housing, I would suggest that the only thing that you might look at is whether or not you want to allow multifamily units in this district.
There are a few now.
Non-conforming.
That might be.
Yes, so somewhere we have a,
Type of thing or something.
yes, so they were developed prior to the zoning changes. So somewhere we have a map of them.
Yeah, there aren't many, but I'm just using my head.
a lot of duplexes.
Duplexes are allowed.
Yeah.
Uses.
Yeah, the 2 families are allowed.
Just a few. Yeah, okay.
So we can all chew on that.
Well, Bill's house can probably have 6 units, right, Bill?
You're a real comedian, friend. Sometimes it feels like it, sometimes it doesn't.
Poor. How's Mrs. Brown doing?
Not too good.
I didn't think so.
Not too good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a good one.
Okay,
So we'll come, that's where we will start next time.
our homework will be to contemplate,
Multifamily within the Rock District.
and then the last district would be the village business.
The last district will be the Village Business District. So that's where we'll get to, and then we can talk about S100 and the impacts on the Village Business District, since we've consolidated all your sewer within that district. So you made your life and my life a lot easier with that decision tonight. So I thank you for that.
Oh, my.
Okay.
Okay.
So the next item on the agenda is an action item to approve the planning commission guidelines that we had discussed a few meetings back. Melissa had wordsmithed them a little bit. See if I can find them.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you.
Oh, Kevin, that is something. I'm going to be away on the 3rd, I'm gonna be on vacation in August. So I'd asked if we could move the August meeting from the 3rd to a different time.
So in August, we'll do it at the 3rd Tuesday.
Which is the 8/15 would be the 15th would be the 3rd Tuesday in August.
And I'm gonna be away then. So I think we talked about
Yeah,
moving
we
it
talked
to the,
about that and I neglected to capture that, but we could do it potentially the 1st Tuesday.
Which would be the 1st.
which would be the first.
Yeah.
So I could do it the 1st, or I could do it the 22nd.
Is there any preference?
Maybe this is a good moment to mention that you said that we might have 2 meetings in September, which I'm fine with. If they could be later in the month, that'd be great, because I know through about the 12th or so of September, I'm out of pocket. But if they're shifted a little bit later, I'd be more likely to make them. Thanks.
September after the 12th? That would be putting them pretty close together. Can you prep for them that tight? We did set 3rd and 4th or something like that.
Are there Tuesday meetings on the 2nd and 4th nights?
I have to. I do for the school board, but I don't know if there is here.
Okay. Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we'd have to check that. We've always had that first and third slot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd want to check with the DRB too to see what their meeting night is.
They meet on Mondays, don't they?
So I could do the 1st of
Tuesday.
August for the next meeting,
Okay.
if that works for all of you.
1st of August, does that make sense? For our August meeting? Okay, let's do that then.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for dropping that.
Okay.
Glad you brought it.
Will we need to get that warning out shortly?
I think you only need 24 hours
Okay.
or 48, one of the other.
48.
Yeah, I mean, the agenda's not gonna change hardly at all, so we'll just pop it back in. Okay. So, okay. And then,
You'll look at September later, or do you want to make a decision?
no, I need to, it sounds like I need to understand the availability of the room. And then I can go from there, if we want to move from the 1st and 3rd.
Okay,
Great,
great.
thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
So if you recall, we started a discussion in May. And if we choose to adopt this, I'd like to entertain a motion. And then if there are specific items that we had discussed before, people were looking at changing around a little bit, I'd like to suggest that we amend the motion for any changes. Does any of that make sense?
I mean, I thought the only sticking point really was the non-participation bullet. And then everything else I thought was everybody pretty much agreed on.
Okay, you want to make the motion to adopt it minus that bullet?
Yeah, I mean, I did have a question, it just occurred to me, what
We
is there
need-
any?
We need a motion, we need a motion before questions.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Oh, okay,
the-
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Okay, Fred's gonna make the motion to adopt with or without that bullet?
We'll change the bullet if we want to change it.
Okay. You, a
Second.
motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Who seconded it?
That was Anna.
Oh,
Anna.
sorry.
Okay,
I didn't know.
any discussion? Now, somebody had a question. Who was it?
Melissa.
Melissa, what was your question?
No, is there any, I guess, ramifications of non-participation? I mean, I don't understand. I mean, if we say people must participate in discussion, then what is it if they don't? What happens if they don't?
I don't.
I don't think there's any remedial action for it.
Right, I mean, I
I think
can't
it was
imagine.
more.
Yeah.
The intent, I think, was to prompt engagement and not silence and then armchair quarterbacking it and complaining about it after the fact.
Right, right.
But if we're striking it, we're striking it, and that's.
So, John, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, just to clarify, are you, I'm not comfortable with several of this that reads sort of like a loyalty oath in some ways, and I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with the third bullet because to me, that says we can't have open conversation, can only be structured conversation. And I think that's unfortunate. That would be unfortunate if there's no way to have a free and flowing conversation. Then what are we here for? Yeah, the idea of non-participation, which I'm not sure how that's defined, being considered tacit agreement. I really don't want anybody putting words into my mouth about something. Maybe I'm not at a meeting. That's non-participation. Am I then agreeing with, what am I agreeing with if it's assumed that I'm agreeing because I wasn't there? I just don't see how that works. And what does, in the next bullet down, after deliberation, voting is concluded, all members will accept the actions of the commission, whether or not they agree. Well, I agree, accept, but I don't think we've had any examples of people not accepting that. And I'm also not sure in the last bullet point, members shall be a positive representative of the planning commission at all times. I'm not sure what that means, positive representative. I mean, does it mean, you know, I'm not sure. Can you tell me what it means?
I would interpret that as all planning commission members would respect their fellow members at all times. So that there wasn't a derogatory things said, at least about them as a planning commission member.
Why don't we say it just that plainly then?
Or you sure it doesn't mean I have to wear a suit and tie? Or does it, or?
That's section 12, Slim. We put that one in just for you.
Yes, and then the member shall only act or speak on behalf of the planning commission. I mean, I have freedom of speech. I don't want to, I'm not going to sign up for any of this stuff, to be honest with you. Just letting you know,
Yeah.
I don't have any respect for this at all. And so that, I guess that says enough.
So with that, Slim, that's a very, very fine line. It's not. You certainly do have a personal opinion, and I've exercised that very vocally on other boards. But I've made sure that my comments were very clear and stated as my personal opinion, as opposed to that of the board. And I think that's the distinction, is when people tend to say, well, I'm on, in my case, the school board, and here's what I think. That's a whole lot different than me saying, here's my personal opinion as a member of the school board, and this is not a position of the school board. I think that's all I'm saying.
And again, and what is a positive representative? What does that even mean? I'm totally aboard with John's thing there. I don't even know what that means.
Well, I mean, as Fred said it, as an individual, but also has to do with the planning commission, that you shouldn't be going around. You should be agreeing with what the commission's doing and not going around and say, well, I would do this and I didn't agree with that, but this is the position of the planning commission or the school board or whatever the case may be.
So do you mean to say that if, let's say I'm on the losing end of a vote on a particular policy issue and it's a 5-4 vote or a 3-4 vote or whatever, but the commission votes against the way I feel on a particular issue, am I not free to go out and explain to members of the public in public engagement to say why I voted the other way, why I disagree with the majority in that instance? Would that be outside the bounds of these rules?
I think if you clearly stated that as a personal opinion, and I'm going from how I've stated it, particularly with the school board, keep clear it's your personal opinion, but don't dwell on the fact that the balance of the planning commission didn't side with your position. Is that?
Well, here's a crazy hypothetical just to illustrate it in the extreme a little bit. And obviously it's an extreme example. Let's say a majority of the planning commission voted to allow 40-story skyscrapers in downtown Bristol, and I disagreed with that. But the majority got the day on that vote. Could I not go out and make a case to the public as a private citizen and stating that, yes, I am a member of the planning commission. I'm not speaking for the commission as a whole. I'm speaking for myself, but would I be not, in order to concur with this bullet point, could I not go out and explain why I think 40-story skyscrapers are a bad idea for Bristol?
Again, I'm thinking of as a clear personal opinion is a lot different than carrying a board decision and slanting it in such a way that it was a poor decision or it wasn't the right decision, or you just don't, so there's a very fine line there, but personal opinions are by board members are fine, but when you start exerting a personal opinion that appears to be the board's opinion, that's not okay. So
can I play diplomat for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so I would say the first paragraph sums up what we all really want to do. The bullets, I would say that being prepared and to articulate yourself in a clear, concise, and calm manner, those make perfect sense to me. I think the other statement that we are looking for is that members of the Planning Commission shall make every effort to distinguish between the decisions of the Planning Commission and speaking as a member of the Planning Commission and their own private opinion, feeling, etc., as a private citizen. That's pretty clear to me. I think it's fair to say, hey, Anna Daler, I think this decision was a bunch of what, right? I don't agree with it. I don't like it as a person. It's not what I would have done. But as a member of the Planning Commission, I listened, I deliberated, I expressed my opinion, I listened to the other members, and we voted, right? The decision has been made, and as a member, right, I'm going to support what the decision what the decision was. That's just being a good citizen and a good civil servant. It's what we all signed up for, right? We deliberate, the decision is made, and we're not going to fight what the commission said publicly as a member of the commission. Privately, we can have our opinion, but I don't think the rest of those bullet points really say that to me.
So
They say a lot of other stuff, or it's not clear, like what's a positive representative, right? You know, I think there's a lot of debate there.
do you have that collected so that you can make a motion to amend?
I can try. So I'm going to propose that we edit what has been presented here to include the first paragraph and bullet points 1 and 2, to strike the remaining bullet points, and to add a bullet point that says members of the Planning Commission shall make every effort to distinguish between Planning Commission decisions, opinions, etc., and their own feelings as a private citizen.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
I think, I don't know, I think the fourth bullet point, what's wrong with that? Because that also addresses anyone that comes to speak, or any member of the public that's at the public comment section.
I'm sorry, but Jim is waving his arms, trying to get our attention. I don't know if you guys cannot see that.
No, I don't.
I don't know if you can unmute.
Can I interject here something as a private citizen? And having been on many boards and run many commissions, this is this is totally unnecessary. You guys are getting carried away with this. This is a volunteer organization. You guys all work very well together. And so far, I've been watching all the meetings. You all respect each other's opinions. Everybody can have an objective opinion for or against something. You don't need rules and regulations. This is a volunteer organization. We don't need to start putting all these rules on it. You're gonna lose members. People aren't gonna be interested in serving to begin with. This is gonna make it even worse. My suggestion is scrap this whole idea and work it along as you have in the past. Everybody gets along fine. I'm sure you have your opinions, and that should be the end of it. That's all I have to say. Voice of experience, okay, guys?
And then, and what
Okay, thanks.
happens when that's not the case? Because it could happen. We're talking also about the future, not just us all personally.
Well, what
This
would you
is-
like to happen, Melissa?
I'm
What do
sorry,
you think, what do you think should happen
what do you mean?
if somebody
What-
speaks unconcisely, or repeats themselves, or doesn't have it appears not to be a positive
What?
representative of the board? What do you expect to happen as a sanction?
No,
if
no,
they
I'm talking
practice?
about that. We were talking about the first two, or the fourth bullet point of just
I
saying.
think Jim was talking about the whole idea, I thought.
No, yeah, well, yeah, he was talking about the whole deal, but I'm talking about if we truncate it to those, those couple of points.
So we have a motion to amend on the floor. It's been seconded. We do have some discussion about reservation on one of the points. But let's call it to a vote.
Let me read it again.
Just to
Someone-
clarify, we're voting on where we're to keep the first paragraph, bullets 1 and 2, and then what was added by, Anna.
Yes, so that's what we will be voting on.
Okay, thank you.
Clear, concise, and compact. That's reasonable. That's reasonable.
So, and then. So the issue to bring back the discussion would be the fact that Melissa had thought that bullet 4 should have been left in, but anyway. All those in favor of Anna's motion. To amend, thank you. Raise your hand or say aye.
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 Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Six. So Anna's motion to amend carries. So we're back to the amended motion. Is there any continued debate on that? Hearing none, let's vote on the motion as amended. And I don't, do we need to hear it one more time?
No.
Peggy, can you read that back to us?
You're kidding. Okay. Motion to amend to include first paragraph and bullets 1 and 2. Strike the rest and add members of planning commission shall make every effort to to distinguish themselves. Distinguish their private thoughts I'm sorry, to distinguish the planning commission decisions and their own feelings as a private citizen.
Okay. So let's vote on that. I think we did once with the amendment. Let's vote again. Raise your hand or say aye.
I have a question on that last part. Where about a planning commission member has to make sure they let people know if they don't agree with something, that it's their own personal opinion, but not the, the board voted for it or something. Is that what it says?
Yeah. So it's to distinguish, the way it was written was to distinguish from the board's work versus their personal opinion.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. What I was thinking about, and there, there was some disagreement today about commercial uses and residential and this. Oh, no, that wasn't it. It was the state's actions about voting, the public voting. Let's say we decide or we recommend to the board, because the select board will make it, the decision, but we agreed. But one person on our planning commission said, I think the public should vote for it. And they took a leadership position in getting the petitions so that it forced the select board to do a vote. Would that run afoul of what we're doing? Or would someone be permitted to do that on a personal basis?
Just as long as they made it clear they were doing it on
That
their
was their
own
own personal belief.
as opposed to a board action.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, let's vote again. We heard the motion. It's been clarified. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, passes. We'll put that in a folder somewhere. So we have no new business. We have 2 meetings, minutes to approve, one for April 18th and one for June 20th. John wrote up the April 18th minutes. Thank you for that, John. And then June is our last meeting. I will entertain, I would like to just combine them. If there's any comments, just draw out which set of meeting minutes you want to comment on, but to handle them both together and just do it. John?
Yeah, just to say in my draft of the April 18th, the first 3 lines on who was present, visitors and others present, I left question marks there just as a marker asking you all, did I leave anybody out? If not, of course, those question marks can be stricken, but I just left it there to make sure that those are right.
Okay, so I guess the thing would be you wouldn't see who was in person then.
Yeah, nobody
You
listed
will not.
there who says you're in person wasn't there. Does anybody see that?
Okay, so so could we, if somebody was not on the list and was at that meeting, can they get a hold of you and then let's give it a week and then you can confirm and we'll make that the official minutes for the 18th. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
Yep, I think I got it right, but like Jim Quaglino, I don't think he was others present that night. Jim, I don't think you were there.
Are there any other clarifications or comments to either one of those sets of minutes?
I don't think I've missed any, guys, so.
There's one meeting you weren't in. I know which one it was, but there was one meeting you were in.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So
Motion
moved.
to approve?
Second,
So Shannon approves, John seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, passes unanimously. We had removed discussion of zoning administrator's report because there's no zoning administrator in our presence. Miscellaneous correspondence, there was quite a bit. The Conservation Commission is working on management plans, and part of the bid package, the prep package was some management plans that they've been working on and have submitted them or about to submit them to the select board for review. And they've shared those with us for informational purposes or potentially some discussion if somebody has dived into those reports at any length. Those reports support our town plan actions for certain sections and action items that we are working on in the near term. So that is of interest from that point of view. That is all I had for miscellaneous correspondence. I guess the next thing we can move on to is public comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
yeah, just regarding the parking lot thing, maybe the 6th bullet down, this request to amend the zoning requirement. Could I move that we take that out of the parking lot? It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. I think you've told me or told us before, we don't have any additional correspondence on this. It's not an open matter. I don't know.
So, I'm kind of reserved to taking it out of the parking lot. I think that will become a discussion item when we start looking at the downtown business or village business district and we start finalizing uses. So I think it should stay there. We had committed to the wells at one point that we would review that when the time was pertinent, and I believe the time will be pertinent when we visit that district.
Right. Well, it's not an Airbnb. It's not a B&B. It doesn't qualify as that. I don't know. It just I don't. So I see you're this is a request to see if we want to change the zoning for that district.
Yes, essentially. Okay.
Sure.
Did we have public comment?
You asked.
I did. Okay, so the next thing is adjournment. Anybody would like to make a motion?
To adjourn.
Rob makes a motion, Melissa seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Right.